I call the honourable member Ian Lees-Galloway.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. It's a great pleasure for me to rise and speak, for the most part, in support of the Land Transport, Road Safety and Other Matters Amendment Bill. As the opposition is wont to do, I suppose opposition members have focused on the areas of the bill that we disagree with and where we disagree with the government. But I think it is important to reinforce the point that the Labour Party endorses the overwhelming majority of this bill and endorses the intention of this bill to improve road safety, to lower the number of lives lost every year and to lower the injury rate on the road in New Zealand. So to that end, we do support most of the measures in the bill. We support measures like a zero limit for repeat drink drivers. It is important that people who are caught drinking and driving do receive that message when they are caught on that first offence, that when they are allowed to drive again, when they get their licence back, there is an expectation. First of all, they shouldn't have done it in the first place, but there absolutely is an expectation that they will not do it again, and that if they are caught doing it again, then the penalties will be much, much harsher. That, I think, will help provide the kind of incentive to keep people from becoming drink drivers, or worse, repeat drink drivers. I'd like to point out, though, that the point at which someone is caught drinking and driving is an excellent opportunity to get those people assessed and to decide whether or not they could benefit from some form of alcohol treatment. It may prove that they have an alcohol addiction. It may prove that they are exhibiting behaviours which will indicate that they are likely to become a repeat drink driver regardless of the penalties. And that is an excellent opportunity for the health system to step up and provide the kind of treatment that could actually prevent that drink driving behaviour showing itself, and in fact prevent possible accidents and injuries and deaths further down the track from that behaviour. Unfortunately, at the moment, our health system is not that responsive. We do not have the capacity in our health system to respond in that kind of way. There is a significant waiting list for those who self-identify or are referred through whatever means, however they are identified as having a drug or alcohol problem. There is a significant waiting list for getting people into treatment, and often what we find is that by the time that treatment becomes available, particularly for those people who have self-identified as being at risk, then perhaps the motivation isn't there anymore and they don't engage in that treatment in the way that they might have had the treatment been available on the spot. So it would be great to see, going hand in hand with this piece of legislation, improved funding and improved support for the health system to be able to respond to those people who are discovered to have a drinking problem as a result of being caught being drink drivers. Labor also supports the zero limit for under 20 drivers. People who are under 20 are not only learning to drive, learning to become better drivers, learning how to be part of the traffic system, and that often has its issues, and that's why we see so many accidents and issues amongst those drivers who are learning. But of course, many of them at that age are also learning to drink as well, and the two absolutely should not mix. We know this amongst adults, that the two shouldn't mix, but young people who are learning to drive, learning how to drink responsibly, those two things should not go together, and so we absolutely support the zero limit for under 20 drivers. We also support the introduction of alcohol interlocks for repeat offenders. Going back to what I was saying about harsher penalties, again, if you are silly enough to be a repeat offender, or if you haven't had the support to deal with an alcohol addiction, then some consequences are going to have to come with that, and I suppose giving up of some liberties is going to have to come with that, and it doesn't seem like a great liberty to have to give up the ability to drive without that interlock, ensuring that you have not imbibed too much alcohol before you get behind the wheel. So there is much in this bill that Labor is absolutely supportive of, and including doubling the minimum prison time for drunk drugged or reckless driving causing death. I know that will be very, very well received by the New Zealand public, particularly by those who have lost loved ones at the hands of someone who has been behind the wheel when they shouldn't have been, either through having had too much to drink or consuming other drugs, or indeed those who have taken a life as a result of reckless driving. So I know that will certainly be well received. Where, of course, the Labour opposition departs from the government's view on this bill is the fact that we think that this was an ideal opportunity to reduce the adult blood alcohol level from 0.08 to 0.05. Mr. Speaker, this was one of those rare opportunities, perhaps not so rare, but an opportunity that everybody in Parliament looks for, where both the evidence and the court of public opinion come together. The evidence is strongly in favour of reducing the blood alcohol limit. The public opinion is strongly in favour of reducing the blood alcohol limit, and indeed the Minister's own anecdotal research is in favour of reducing the blood alcohol limit. So it really is a missed opportunity for this Parliament to carry out something which not only does the evidence say is the right thing to do, but would be extremely well received by the New Zealand public. Now, the Minister and the Government say that we need to get more evidence, to gather more evidence on this issue. And I have no doubt that once that evidence is gathered, this change will occur. I have absolutely no doubt that in the fullness of time, the blood alcohol limit in New Zealand will be reduced from 0.08 to 0.05. It is just a pity that we're not doing it now, because if you look overseas, if you look to Australia and New South Wales, they achieved an 8% reduction in fatal crashes and a 7% reduction in serious injury crashes after they reduced their blood alcohol limit. In Queensland, they achieved an 18% reduction in fatal crashes and a 14% reduction in serious crashes. Belgium achieved a 10% reduction in all alcohol-related fatalities, and France achieved a 30% reduction in alcohol-related fatal crashes. So the evidence is there, Mr. Speaker. We don't really need to wait to gather more evidence to put at risk any more lives. We could be doing it now. But I do have hope that in the fullness of time this change will occur, and Parliament will go ahead and do what is right and do what people are crying out for us to do, if we're honest. The other area where we do disagree with the government is increasing the driver licensing age from 15 to 16. And this, I guess, is a slightly different situation from what we've seen with the blood alcohol limit, because it does. I can imagine there's a lot of people out there who instinctively feel that increasing that driver licensing age is the right thing to do. It just seems like a sensible thing to do, to increase the age from 15 to 16. We know that a lot of the crashes happen amongst those young people, and we know that if you allow someone to mature an extra year, then they'll be that much more mature. But the evidence simply doesn't bear that out. And we have to be making evidence-based policy and passing evidence-based legislation in this Parliament. And as much as the public might think that this is instinctively a good idea, and I certainly, when I first heard of the idea, thought it was a good idea, but when we looked at the evidence, it simply didn't back it up. The difference the problem is that young drivers in those first few years of driving are at a much higher risk. It doesn't matter if they start driving at 15 or if they start driving at 16. Really, unless we were to increase the driver licensing age to 25, when the frontal lobe is fully developed and people have achieved, hopefully most people have achieved a much greater level of maturity, then increasing the age would make sense. But the evidence doesn't back up the increase from 15 to 16. So there are some areas where the Labour Party differs from the government's position, but overall, Mr. Speaker, we are very pleased to support this legislation.
I call the